We're going to talk more about this now. On set with California Democratic Congresswoman Nanette Barragán. She represents a portion of Los Angeles County, including the city of Paramount. First, Congresswoman, just your reaction to this news that the White House has mobilized Marines to respond to the situation in Los Angeles. Do you think that's necessary?
Absolutely not. It's disturbing. And I think your person on the ground there makes a great point. What is the need for them? There is no need. There is peaceful protest happening downtown as we speak. Yes, there may be a very small group of people who have been more violent, throwing bottles. Those people should be arrested. We condemn any kind of violence. We continue to do that. But there is no need for the Marines. This is the president escalating a situation to try to make it as tense as possible. I think this is his step trying to get to martial law, trying to be the dictator that he wants to be. It's very dangerous. Our Marines are not trained to go in and to work with civilians and to do any kind of civilian control. So it's disturbing that they're bringing them in. It's wrong. I think it's an abuse of power. But it also goes to why the president is doing this. The president wants to distract and take away from what's happening in Washington. We know he's about to take health care away from millions of people. His bill is in trouble. The economy is tanking. Prices are going up. This is his way of saying, let's go talk about the issue that always brings me back home, and that is immigration. And coming after California and doing it there is what he's doing because, of course, this feud he has with the governor. The people are protesting. They're protesting against the mass deportations. They want the National Guard out. They want ICE out. And I guarantee you, if they pulled out and they were out, these protests would end because this is about the president causing this chaos. It's about the president wanting this. And we can't allow protesters to give in and take that bait. So
the chances of ICE, in particular, pulling out at this particular point in time seems pretty unlikely. You told other networks that you have been told to get ready for 30 days of ICE enforcement with the potential of 2,000 troops. I mean, what do you think the next month could look like in Los Angeles, and how are you preparing your constituents for that?
Well, we are hearing on the ground in different parts of Los Angeles that they're seeing ICE mobilize, have staging areas. So it could be that they're about to do a larger enforcement throughout different parts of L.A. County. They did say get ready for 30 days of enforcement, and that looks like what we're looking at right now just by seeing the mobilization of National Guard, of course, the Marines now. My hope is that we can get a court to stop it because I think that this is an abuse of the president and his powers. This is a manufactured crisis, as we, definitely have heard. But it's putting people in danger, and constituents are concerned. They're worried. People don't want to go to school. People don't want to go to work. And I just want to reiterate, this is a very small part of Los Angeles, of the images that we're seeing. There's like 99% of Los Angeles. People don't even know what's going on. They're going about their daily lives. There is nothing out of control there. And local law enforcement has said, we don't need the help. We don't need it. We have this under control. If they just pull out and they leave, we can get this under control. And let's remember, Friday and Saturday, when this all started, it didn't take the National Guard. It didn't take the Marines to get it under control. The LAPD got it under control. The sheriffs had it under control. This is exactly what the president wanted. Send in the National Guard, raise tensions, cause more people to want to, do violent things. And he's getting what he wants. This guy is a showman. He knows what he's doing. We've got to reject it.
But you can see there has been some violence, right? We've seen the driverless cars that have been set fire to. We've seen the water bottles thrown at police officers. And it did appear at one point that this was getting worse, that there was an escalation in those tensions. You still believe that those tensions can be held under control with just the efforts of the LAPD and not any additional support?
Absolutely, because I think the people are doing that because of their outrage on the mass deportations and the presence of the National Guard, as we heard your reporter on the ground say. But there are people who are just looking for trouble. And even your reporter said there's anarchists there. Right. And let's, distinguish between the people that are really there to protest the cause versus people just looking for trouble and violence. And those people, they should be arrested. This is what the president wants. And we can't let them do that because I think that's the step the president's trying to get to, declaring martial law.
So what would you say to someone that wants to go there and protest peacefully without contributing to potential violence? What would your recommendation Do you have a problem with them confronting ICE officers, blocking intersections? Where does that stop? Where does it become illegal and something that needs to be enforced?
Well, we saw today what can happen when you go and peacefully protest. There's thousands of people right now at Grand Park doing just that. So, look, people are going to go. If they're going to get in the way, they could expect to be charged. They could expect to be arrested. But what I say is, if you're going to have civil disobedience, make it sure it's nonviolent, because violence gets us nowhere. We know it's prevailed in the past during different movements, and we are standing strong with our brothers and sisters in Los Angeles to say we're going to all stand together against these mass deportations, and that's the protests you're seeing. Again, any violence, we totally condemn it. Those people should be arrested.
What about blocking an intersection? Where does that fall on the spectrum? Is that appropriate? I mean, that's illegal, right?
It is, and I think that's a form of civil disobedience. When you think about John Lewis crossing Selma and getting beaten there, so I think it's a line where you decide whether you're going to do it or not. It's a non-violent form of protesting. Now, again, people need to make decisions for themselves. I'm not sure how effective that is. I'm not sure that's something that I would be doing. But, this is a situation where the president is taking steps to make it out of control. And we're seeing more and more of that with more and more people who are angry. Marines, we'll have to see what's going to happen with the response there. But it's pretty outrageous to me to hear that we're sending in troops to do crowd control or whatever they're going to go do there against the very own people, in our communities where they come from.
All right, I want to talk to you now about the back and forth between the president and your governor. I want to play what Tom Homan said on MSNBC earlier today. Take a listen.
Is everyone that has been arrested by ICE agents have a criminal record like those you've described?
Absolutely not. And I said from day one, January 20th, we will prioritize public safety threats and national security threats. However, we will enforce law. If ICE is there arresting that bad guy and other aliens are there, we're going to arrest them. That's what sanctuary cities get.
So this seems to be the basis of Donald Trump's complaints about Gavin Newsom, this moniker of a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state. And this idea that Newsom is being critical that they're going overboard, right? It's one thing to stick to this mission of deporting people who have committed crimes, but other people are getting caught up in it. Is that a distinction without a difference in your mind? And how is ICE going overboard in a way that kind of goes beyond what their authority is?
Well, we know that this president said he was going after criminals. People who voted for him, Latinos that voted for him, said, well, it's not going to be me because I'm not a criminal, right? We know that there's no way he can do the mass deportations he talked about without going and doing indiscriminate racial profiling, which is what's happening, right? They're picking up U.S. Marshals thinking that they're folks they got to deport. They're picking up women who've just given birth, waiting outside of hospitals or going to schools. It is crossing the line. They are not doing targeted enforcement of violent criminal offenders. If that were happening, I don't think you would have the objection because nobody objects to that. But what they're doing is they're going into communities. They're just rounding people up, U.S. citizens included. We know they've also are trampling on due process. And that is a concern that people have. People are scared and they're afraid. So you're seeing the response of ICE crossing the line. I mean, look, they're saying they're willing to arrest the governor. Give me a break, right? They're arresting members of Congress. They won't even let members of Congress go in to do the oversight, which is written into law. So you have got an administration who is not following law and order, but who is defying the law, who's defied the Supreme Court. We've seen that.
And you've already said that you believe that the Trump administration is marching toward martial law. If they were to arrest the governor, and obviously we're getting mixed signals from the White House on that, how would you view that? What step and what could Democrats do if that were to happen?
Well, I think that would cause an outrage across the country. I don't think this is. You're talking about something that has never been done before. You're talking about to the point where this president, is doing everything possible to be a dictator. That would be another step in that direction. Everybody across the country, regardless if you're a Democrat or a Republican, should be condemning that kind of conduct. And unfortunately, my friends on the Hill right now are too afraid to speak up or stand up to this president. And again, it's unbelievable to watch. But we need the courts to also step in and to make sure they get things under control and put them in check. That's really what's necessary.
Okay, Congresswoman Nanette Barragán, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.